This is a part of a series that the Journal of Supply Chain Management is producing in order to look at competitive dynamics. That is how firms conduct their strategies in reaction to other firms' strategies or to changes in the environment. And specifically for this particular paper, we're looking at political strategies or political actions and how firms will conduct sort of political actions in order to influence the strategy formulation.
So in this research, so the idea behind this research and the other contributions that we're making in this research is we're trying to, so the existing research looks at how the firms kind of, or the political environment impacts supply chains and the firms and their supply chain. So what we are looking at is how the firms can engage with the political environment and help and use that engagement to facilitate their supply chain strategies. So the research that we do is a conceptual piece. In this conceptual piece, we use the structure, conduct, and performance theoretical model, and we also use the competitive dynamics model. So we enhance those models and we extend the typology of Oliver and Holzinger. So Oliver and Holzinger, their paper kind of uses to propose some of these political actions that the firms use to engage with the political environment. So our research is actually contextualizing those political actions in terms of supply chain management and trying to understand how those political actions can be leveraged to kind of improve the supply chain strategies or enhance those supply chain strategies for a competitive advantage.
Sure, I'm just following up what Abhay said. The structure, conduct, performance paradigm says that there's a market structure that influences a firm's conduct or strategy, which in turn will have an impact on the firm's performance. And so researchers tend to view the environment, the structure, market structure is fixed. And so firms will then choose a strategy, supply chain strategy, in order to best fit with that market structure and turn to try to improve performance. But what we're trying to do with this paper is we're trying to say that firms can actually change their market structure. They can influence their market structure through political actions. And of course, firms do this all the time through their lobbying efforts. Now, firms can also influence the impact of their strategies or their conducts on performance by, say, facilitating flow of imports through a port. For a firm that has a supply chain strategy that relies on a lot of imports, facilitating those imports through a port, through changing the customs regulations can be very helpful to that firm as it competes against other firms that may be sourced domestically.
And I think we kind of briefly touched upon on the theoretical perspectives and angles that we use. Again, as Martin said, the structure, conduct, performance, and the competitive dynamics theory have been used to kind of understand how firms can actually engage proactively or reactively with their political environment. And this engagement is not just in terms of lobbying or in terms of influencing the political environment. They could also comply with the political environment, and how we extend the Oliver and Holzinger's typology of political actions is we say that beyond which the strategy literature has already identified that the engagement of the firms with their political environment could only be in terms of compliance or influence. We say that they could also moderate their political environment, and by moderation we say they could circumvent. So and we also say that they could actually at some point submit to their political environment as well against what they believe to be more profitable for their business. And apart from that, we also say that the firms could also stay neutral or free ride others' political strategies. So let's say a firm takes there is another competitor or a buyer or supplier who actually takes some kind of political actions. Some of these firms could also take a passive view on that and say that we would actually just free ride on some of those strategies and not engage proactively or reactively and invest our resources. So the idea behind this is that these political actions, which are aided or facilitated by supply chain network resources, could actually help the firms to, take advantage of their political environment in the way that's best suitable for them to kind of facilitate their own supply chain strategies. And within this paper, what we do is we take supply chain risk management as an example of a strategy, and then we look at how the firms, in terms of like 3 or 4, those antecedents, we look at one, whether the political environment for the firm is favorable or unfavorable. Then we look at whether the firms have these political resources or not, and these political resources as augmented by supply chain network resources. And I keep on saying augmented by supply chain network resources. So what do we mean by that is that, so within your network, so let's say you have, buyers and suppliers, and your buyers have some kind of power, or your suppliers have some kind of power that they can exert. So using that power as one of those tools, or even the information flow within your supply chain as political intelligence, you can actually augment your, you can use those, your resources or those network resources to kind of augment your political actions to take advantage. Now, in terms of like the extension or the theoretical contributions that we're making, there are about 3 theoretical contributions that we're making. So the first one, again, as I said, was, we contribute to the supply chain strategy literature by theorizing, several mechanisms on how firms are engaging with the political environment to facilitate their supply chain and performance. And so we are taking a view that the firms are not, the angle that the political environment, already the supply chain literature has studied how political environment can impact supply chains, but we are studying how the firms can proactively or reactively engage with these with their environment. Then the other theoretical contribution that we're kind of making is we are taking the theoretical models in terms of SCP and competitive dynamics and Oliver and Holzinger's typology, and extending that and generalizing that in terms of supply chain management context.
Yeah, I think that Abhay explained this really well, and I'm not sure that I have much to add. I think that just to summarize what he said, what we've come up with is a sort of a set of criteria that will help determine what a decision, an optimal or a better decision for a company ought to be in terms of engaging in the political environment. So, I mean, if they have resources, obviously they can lobby. If they don't have resources, then perhaps they can be a free rider and benefit from other firms' lobbying efforts. If they are able to see in advance that a particular change in the political environment is coming, they can be proactive. If in fact they can't see this in advance, then they have to adopt a reactive strategy. So there are certain circumstances that will help to dictate what sort of strategy, political strategy, a firm ought to take in order to facilitate its supply chain management strategy.
There are several, implications that we think, and I think we make several theoretical contributions for future researchers to kind of explore. So we propose about 6 to 7 propositions in our research in our paper, and some of these propositions kind of explore several circumstances and combinations of the circumstances in terms of the resource availability, the political environment favorability or unfavorability, and then under those circumstances, what kind of SCRM strategy, given the motivation of improving upon an existing supply chain strategy, how these resources can actually help improve the competitive positioning of that firm. And then under those circumstances, what kind of political actions can be used to kind of augment those supply chain strategies. So we have these different combinations, which I think it would make much more sense for the readers to kind of go through those propositions and understand. But then overall, I think our biggest contribution or the findings that we have is trying to understand the underlying mechanism of how the political actions can be used in conjunction with your existing supply chain strategy under given circumstances to improve your competitive positioning.
Yeah, I certainly would agree with Abhay. We would like to think about this paper as being just more than a theoretical paper, but one that has practical implications. And certainly if a firm use a typology similar to what we have to think about what their situation is, I think that'll help them to better formulate political actions that will help their supply chain strategy be more successful.